In this video, we are going to discuss about SAML and OAuth. SAML is an authentication protocol and used for single sign-on. When user tries to access any service or any website, then we can say that service or that website could be a service provider. We can call it service provider. We need to understand these terms, service provider, ID providers, because these terms are very confusing terms when you prepare about this topic, SAML. So while preparing CISSP exam, I was always confused about these terms. Um, I did some research on this topic, and the way I have understood SAML, so I will try my best to explain about those terms in this video. So when user tries to log into any service, to any website, that website we can call it service provider. And another term which you see here, it's IDP. So that means the SP, the service provider, will redirect to the user, redirect the user to an identity provider for authentication purpose. So service provider will ask IDP to authenticate that user, whether that user is legitimate user. And once IDP verifies the user is a legitimate user, then the IDP will generate a SAML assertion. That means it is kind of token which IDP will generate, and the user is redirected back to SP with the assertion, and then the access is granted. So the important point or the confusion which I had in the past, that okay, I do understand what is service provider, but I have never understood who is IDP in that particular case. So we need to understand that SAP, the service provider, knows which IDP to use based on company configuration, email domain, pre-configured setting, or federation. We will talk shortly about federation, but service provider always knows that this particular user belongs to which company, and who is IDP, who can authenticate that user, whether he or she is legitimate user and they are allowed to access this particular service or website. So IDP does know, it is part of configuration. So service provider knows about it. And if authentication is successful, for instance, authentication, the user is a legitimate user, then IDP sends SAML assertion back to service provider. Thus, the access could be granted to the user. So why have I have mentioned OAuth 2.0 authorization framework? It is not exactly a protocol, but it is a framework. What we need to understand, that if no external resources are required, for instance, API, cloud service, uh, are not needed, then OAuth 2.0 is not required. So if any, while accessing that service or website or application, if further any external resources are required, then OAuth authorization will come into play. And an application, if an application needs to access external resources, for example, Google Drive, API, third-party services, then OAuth provides an access token that allows the application to access those external resources on behalf of the user. If an authenticated user only needs to use the application and no external API or data sharing is required. No auth is needed. So that is very important point we need to understand. OAuth will come in a picture when we need external user. SAML, we also say SAML for federation means multiple organization they can use this SAML protocol. SAML is always ideal for federated identity management where multiple organization companies can authenticate user across different domains. It enables SSO, single sign-on, across multiple organization that trust a common IDP, identity provider. A supplier, vendor, or contractor can log in into company internal system using their own organization credentials. A single IDP can authenticate a user from multiple trusted organization. So if a company X user accesses a website and no external resources are needed, for example, as I said, Google Drive API, OAuth 2.0 will not come into play. That is important to understand. OAuth is only needed when an application needs access to external resources or API on behalf of the users. So SML is used in enterprise environment and works well for web-based application, but it is not limited to legacy application, and it is not ideal for mobile apps that we need to understand, or modern API driven authentication. Modern authentication, mobile apps, cloud app often prefers OpenID, OpenID Connect over SML. We will have separate discussion on Open Connect ID in upcoming video. But if we summarize our discussion, SAML is single sign-on protocol. It when user tries to access any website, that service we can call it that service or application is service provider, and service provider knows about identity provider, who is identity provider in this for this particular user, who can authenticate that user, whether he or she is legitimate user. And when that request is authenticated, then user is redirected back to service provider with token, or we can call it with SML assertion, a kind of XML based token. So then that user will get an access to that application or whatever it is, whether it is application or web service. So a limitation is it uses XML based assertion, so making it less ideal for mobile apps, as I told you uh, a couple of minutes ago. So OAuth will come in a picture when user need to access an external resources. So I try to simplify this topic, and I hope you have understood. So you can also provide your feedback in comment section of, or if you have any further question on that topic, if you need more clarity, please also write in comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video.